Hello, hello. I am just going to wait for another minute in case we have a few more people that want to join the webinar. So just stand by and we will wait for one more minute and then we will get started. Hopefully everyone is having a great Thursday. It's almost Friday. Okay, so it is officially noon where I am, so we're going to get going on this webinar. I hope that everyone is having a great day. So good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Camille Blomdahl, and I am the Director of Client Service at WealthTrace. I will be taking you through the WealthTrace Planner today. If you have any questions as we go along, please send them through the chat, and I will do my best to answer them either after each section, or I may need to hold off on answering some of them until the end of the webinar, or I may follow up with you via email. And to ask a question, please click on the Q&A button. You should see that towards the bottom of your Zoom window. Okay, so we're going to be starting off on the home screen. On this screen, you can get a brief overview of your plan and see how your retirement plan is shaping up. This page will show you how things are looking if the returns are similar to what they have historically been. So the home screen is a static look into the plan projections, and it assumes the rate of return on all the investments are the same every year, unless there is a future asset reallocation. So you can see the projected investment values down here on the right-hand side at John's retirement and at Heather's retirement. And I want to point out that this is not the projected value for each of them, but rather the total investment value at each of their retirement dates. These projected balances are shown in today's dollars. And what we mean by today's dollars is that, also known as inflation-adjusted dollars, is that we have stripped out inflation to make the numbers easier to understand. We often use today's dollars in financial planning as the projected balances can otherwise appear much larger than what they will actually be worth in, say, 20 or 30 years. And I just saw a question from Jennifer if everyone will have access to a recording of the webinar afterwards. And yes, you will. We will send out a link to all participants, anyone that's registered, so that you guys can watch the webinar afterwards as well. So you can see the projected investment balances at the end of their plan here and the projected net worth here. You can see their current asset allocation down here across all of their accounts, which is a great way to quickly view how you are invested. You can see any future asset reallocations that have been added here, which we will talk more about when we head over to the plan settings and assumptions. In these graphs over here, you can view things like how expenses are paid for in or before retirement, investment balances, how funds are spent, income versus expenses, and net worth. If you hover over these bars, you can view the breakdown of each bar and see more data. You can also click on the legend down here below the graph, which will filter out the data, and you can pick and choose what you'd like to view. Over here on the left-hand side, you can see all of the investment accounts that are in this plan and the balances. The accounts that show a date below the balances are the accounts that are linked through Yodlee. And this date will indicate the last time that the account was successfully updated. We will talk more about Yodlee and linking accounts a little bit later in the webinar. So a really great feature that we have on this page are these sliders that you can play around with. You can click on these to see how changing your retirement age or your living expenses, your contributions, your rate of returns on your investments, and the amount spent on goals and additional expenses. You can change these and you will see in real time how this would affect your plan. And you'll see these sliders on multiple of the other screens as we go along. Does anyone have any questions on this section before we move on? I see a question from Andrew. I will talk about that one a little bit later. He's asking about the yield on investments. I might answer that as we go along just in the webinar with the content that I have in here. But if you have more questions on that, I can answer that towards the end. So let's leave the home screen and head over to the plan inputs and assumptions. So this is where you will be building the foundation of your plan. So on the personal information page, you can input all of the basic information about yourself and your spouse or partner if you're adding one. You can input your date of birth, if you're already retired, or your retirement date, your current salary, and how long you expect to live. In the plan settings, assumptions, and taxes, I will not go through every single setting, but I will point out a few important ones. You can edit the inflation and COLA rate by clicking here. And you can choose to either use a static rate for the entirety of the plan, or you can choose to vary inflation and COLA rates by year as shown here. You can click on these numbers to make changes to those, and you can easily add a row or delete a row. This is an important feature to have in retirement planning, and it will add to the accuracy of your plan projections, especially in times of volatile inflation. You can input your annual living expense here, and I want to point out that you should enter what you think your living expenses will be when you are retired. So for example, if you have children and you're paying for their expenses, you will want to remove those expenses from your annual expenses if they will no longer be living with you when you are retired. These expenses will also automatically be adjusted for inflation within the software, so you will not need to update these annually unless you have significant changes. Your annual living expenses should include the typical monthly expenses that you have, such as household bills, groceries, gas, utility bills, things like that. Larger expenses such as mortgage payments, car payments, annual vacations should be added in the goals and additional expenses section, which I will show you a little bit later. You should also leave out any income or investment taxes, since the software will deduct those for you. I also want to point out that these expenses will only matter when you are marked as retired in the software. If you are still working and earning a salary, then the software will assume that you are paying for all of your expenses using your salary. We also have a built-in budget worksheet, which can help you calculate your annual living expenses. You can add up to 3 separate budgets, and you can easily toggle between these to see how it would affect your plan. You can click on any of these rows to change the expense description or the amount, and you can easily add or delete rows. You can also choose to add varying expenses. This is for those who may be spending a certain amount on living expenses now and will be spending either much less or much more in the future. These amounts, again, will also automatically be adjusted for inflation. So let's move down to the advanced settings. You can select to reduce living expenses by a percentage here when one partner passes away. You can select to have the software assume that you are rebalancing your investments annually here, and you can add up to 2 future asset reallocations. You can create your own model portfolio to reallocate to, or you can choose from one of ours. We have many model portfolios for you to choose from, and I will show you where these are located towards the end. A lot of people will reallocate their portfolios as they age. Most people will move towards a more conservative asset allocation as they approach retirement to minimize the amount of risk that they are exposed to. I also want to point out that WealthTrace can calculate your Medicare premiums for you and add those into your plan, and that can be toggled on right here. This is often an expense that is overlooked in retirement planning, and since the premiums will change depending on your income, it is important to include this. So we're going to pop over to the taxes section. You can have WealthTrace estimate your federal income tax for you based on the information entered, or you can manually enter your own federal income tax rate here. You can enter your state tax rate down here, and you can indicate whether the state tax rate will change at retirement or at a future date. This is very helpful for those who may be relocating to a state with a higher or lower state tax rate at some point in the future. You can also add a capital loss carryover down here, which will be applied to any or against any capital gains on taxable investment assets. And if you're not familiar with capital loss carryover, it means that when you have sold investments at a loss, you can use the capital loss tax deduction over multiple years to offset future capital gains. So if you have $50,000 in capital losses, you can offset $50,000 of capital gains, meaning you will not own any capital gains taxes on those $50,000. Quick little information on that. So we're going to hop over to the investment assets section. This is where you will see any linked or manually added investment accounts. You can change the account name, assign an account owner, see the balances here, edit the underlying holdings, add contributions, and see the annual return. If you click on this little magnifying glass right here, you can see the holdings and the balances. If you go ahead and click on the pencil icon, you can you'll be able to edit all of the account information. Under the account holdings and assumptions tab, you can change the account type. You can add a cost basis. You can tell the software when you want these funds to be used and whether or not you want to exclude the account from a future asset reallocation. And if we go ahead and click on one of the accounts that is not linked through Yodlee, you will also see the option to enter the underlying holdings. And you can either assign the entire account and asset class, or you can input the tickers for the holdings, which will give more accurate projections, and the balances will update daily. This is where you would add those. And any accounts that are linked through Yodlee will show up here with a green check mark, which indicates that they have been updated upon logging into the software. And I want to give you some additional information on why linking accounts through Yodlee is extremely valuable when creating your financial plan. When investment accounts are linked through Yodlee, the investment accounts or investment assets, are updated daily, and we are able to retrieve every underlying holding, such as stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and more. We also retrieve the asset class that the holding is assigned to. And this allows us to map the holding to the correct asset class within WealthTrace. It also allows us to pull in the historical information for that holding, which is extremely valuable and adds to the accuracy of the projections. We have 3 sections that your accounts will be placed into. In the taxable and tax advantage section, you can add brokerage accounts, Roth IRAs, HSAs, 529 plans. In the qualified tax deferred section, you can add your regular IRAs, 401ks, inherited IRAs, SEP IRAs, and more. And finally, in the non-qualified tax deferred section, you can add deferred compensation accounts and annuities. You can also drag and drop your accounts within these sections, which will change the order in which they are used in the software. By moving these around, you can also see how this will affect your overall plan projections and the tax calculations, which is important if you have an account with high capital gains. You will want to drag all accounts or any accounts with high capital gains towards the bottom so that they will be used as late as possible in the plan. There are a lot of questions coming in. I'm not ignoring them. I'm probably going to answer them towards the end of this section. Um, but let me go through a couple of these and then I'll tackle some of your questions. You can add your Social Security payments in here, or you can have the software estimate it for you. You can also input if the payments are going to change at some point in the future, which is applicable to those who may be taking their own Social Security payment to start, but will later be taking half of their spouse's Social Security payment when they start taking theirs. You can also add one or more pensions down here along with the age of the first payment and whether or not the pension has a survivor benefit. Same goes for person number 2. And then moving on to additional cash inflows. So in this section, you can enter any type of additional income or additional cash inflow that you may have outside of your normal salary, or any type of income that you will have in retirement. You can enter items such as a future inheritance, annuity income payments, and proceeds from a home sale or business sale. You can add when and how often the cash inflow will occur, and you can assign the income its own tax rate or by either choosing one of our tax rates or by just entering your own. And then popping over to the goals and additional expenses. So in here, you can add any type of expenses that you wouldn't want to include in your normal annual expenses. So like I mentioned before, you can enter things such as purchasing a new car every 10 years, an annual vacation, your mortgage, additional healthcare costs, and more. You can also easily make changes to these expenses without having to edit your annual living expenses. You can add when and how often the expense will occur, and you can also tie an expense to a specific account. For example, the expense for Allie's college tuition is tied to her 529 plan that is in the plan. So in the assets and liabilities section, you can add any assets that you own that you'd like to be included in your net worth. So none of these assets will automatically be used to fund any goals unless they're also added in the additional cash inflow section. Their value will just be added to your net worth. As shown here, you can add items such as expensive equipment, collectibles, property. And for the liabilities, you can add a mortgage or any other loan that you have in this section. If you do add a mortgage, the software can calculate your annual mortgage payment for you and add it to the goals and additional expenses section. So for this mortgage, I have entered the loan information here, and the software has automatically calculated my annual mortgage expense and added it here with the correct end date. Let me take a quick peek at some of these questions. We'll head over to Monte Carlo while I'm doing that. Good question from Tom. Let me answer this one. So Tom asked, how should we think about inflation versus COLA? So inflation, you should think about it as it affecting your annual living expenses and all of that. And then the COLA rate is going to affect your Social Security payments. So typically there's a little bit of a lag with the COLA rate. It's usually a little bit less than the inflation rate. So if you do expect your Social Security payments to go down in the future, you can be more conservative with your COLA rate, for example. Okay, so I'm going to answer a couple more of those questions towards the end. But let's look at Monte Carlo. So now that we have reviewed all the plan inputs and assumptions, let's take a look at our Monte Carlo results. So I will give you guys a quick little blurb about what Monte Carlo is. So Monte Carlo in WealthTrace tells you the probability that you will never run out of money in retirement. So we run 1,000 scenarios where the rates of return on all of your investments change in every year. We drill down into every holding that you own and look at the history of the asset class to see what its average rate of return, volatility, and correlation with your other assets has been. We offer the most accurate Monte Carlo results that you can get because we are actually looking at every single holding that you own. WealthTrace is then able to generate a distribution of investment returns, which allows the program to generate a series of varying investment returns every year. When the Monte Carlo simulations are run, the program counts how many times in these simulations you run out of money. So what is shown here is the percent of time that you never run out of money. So the best you can get is 100%. And down here, you can view the worst quartile, the median, and the best quartile. The numbers that are shown here is the average of the simulations run in that quartile. And in this graph here, you can see the 1,000 trials that were run. And the blue line here is the average of the blue line here is the median ending investment value in each year. And the sliders that we looked at in the beginning are also on this screen. If you move these, you can immediately see how your Monte Carlo result changes down here as well. So let's head over to the cash flow projections. In here, you can review your cash flow year by year. You can see all of your income broken down in sections. So for example, you can see your pension income right here, your Social Security, any additional cash inflows that you have, and then your total income is shown down here. You can also view your living expenses in retirement, any additional expenses that you have entered. Oops, sorry. Your total expenses, and then it will also show you if you will have a surplus or a deficit in that year. You can see your estimated federal income tax rate here, along with your state income tax that you have entered, and you can see your required minimum distributions. We will show the total RMD amount. So if you have multiple IRAs, you can see the combined required minimum distribution here. You can click on these headers up here and dig into the data in more detail as well. You can view each account year by year to see the balances, projected growth, average rate of return, expenses paid by each account, and more. You can export this data to Excel, PDF, or CSV by clicking over here. Select one of these and then click on the little cloud. And the sliders that we have seen on the other screens are on this screen as well. So any changes that you make to these will change the data down here in real time. In the investment history breakdown section, you can view historical data on all of your investment accounts, and you can also look at the holdings that are in each account. You can see the allocation, the asset allocation by individual account, or you can group by any combination of accounts here to view that group of that combination of accounts together. You can also choose to group by account type. So if you, for example, just want to see your retirement accounts, you can see the asset allocation across all of those retirement accounts here. Besides the asset allocation, you can also see the current balances at the bottom here and the year-to-date return. The NAs are the ones that don't have a ticker assigned to them. So these are the ones that I've just selected, a mono portfolio, which is an overall asset class. But the ones that have the tickers are the ones that are showing here, or the accounts that are linked. You can also see historical performance for the investments that you own, and you can also compare funds that you own to other funds to see if there are other funds out there that are performing better than yours. You can also look at the fund fees and turnover, which shows you how much you are paying for your funds. And you can also take a look at the transactions, which will go a little bit further down. And this works for the accounts that have been linked through Yodlee. So moving over to the scenario section. These are all of our preset what if scenarios. You can explore things like how retiring earlier or later affects your plan, changes in your living expenses, inflation, delaying or reducing your Social Security payments. You can also create your own user-defined what-if scenarios, and you can combine multiple changes at the same time. So, for example, you can run a scenario where you have increased your investment returns and inflation at the same time to see how both of those combined would affect your plan. You can run a bear market scenario and choose a recession to see how that would impact your retirement plan, or you can create your own hypothetical recession here. We also have a Roth IRA conversion tool, which is very popular. You can select which IRA you want to convert, when to start the conversion, and for how long. You can also select which tax bracket you would like to stay under. The software will then tell you when and how much to convert in each year to maximize your savings and reduce your taxes. We will also be hosting a webinar on Roth conversion soon, so make sure to register for that one if you want more guidance on how to use the Roth conversion scenario tool and how to actually implement the conversion in your plan. We will be sending out an email with more details on that in the next coming weeks. So you can also run reports in the software on your plan. A lot of people like running their plan report monthly or quarterly to have a record of any changes that they have made. You can add notes to your reports and you can export it in multiple formats such as PDF and Excel. I wanted to show you guys one of our reports just so you can see what that looks like. So this is what the plan report looks like. We'll scroll down to one of these sections. So it just gives you a nicer view of all the data in your plan. It's a little bit easier to digest, also in a lot larger window than the normal screen in the software. But popping back over, we are not done quite yet. Okay, so before we wrap up the webinar, I will also try and answer as many questions as I can too. But let's head over to the account level settings first. So over here, you can create your own model portfolios or make changes to the ones that we have created. You can click on the names and the percentages to change those. And you can easily add a model portfolio up here by clicking on this, or you can click on the little trash can to delete any of the ones that we have in here. You can add or make changes to the existing asset classes in here. You could add your own asset class for things like valuable art, gold, real estate, collectibles. And these are the default rate of returns, which you can also change if you'd like. We do update these periodically. I also wanted to let you guys know that we will be releasing a revamped user interface towards the end of this year, potentially early next year, which means that the software will be much faster and even easier to use. But that's it for the webinar as far as the software goes. But I do want to mention all of our various options for customer support. We have a live chat, which you can click on down here. If there are no live agents, then you can leave us a message and we will get back to you as soon as possible. We also have an extensive knowledge base, which I will pull up for you right now. Here. And where you can find answers to your most frequently asked questions. You can type any question that you have in this search bar right here, and any related articles to that question will pop up. Another exciting thing to mention is that we will also be putting together financial planning courses for active subscribers soon. So, for example, we will discuss things like how to determine the best order of withdrawals, Roth conversions, what are they, when do they make sense, how to interpret your Monte Carlo results, and much more. We also offer expert support sessions with Doug Carey, who is the founder of WealthTrace and a chartered financial analyst. He can audit your plan for you and review all of your inputs with you. But let me take a peek at some of these questions. I think what we may need to do, because I have so many questions that have popped up here, we may just host another kind of Q&A session. I think that would be more, um, I think that would be a better option versus me trying to go through these now. So all of these Q&A questions will be saved, and I can see who sent them in, so we'll be able to get back to you. But I'm going to check with the team and see if we can just put together a Q&A session. That might be easier. And that way I can have Doug on the line too, and we can kind of tag team it and both answer a lot of these questions. But if you have any more questions other than the ones that have been sent in through the Q&A, you can also just send them through the live chat, or you can email us at support@mywealthtrace.com. I believe most of you also got access to my email in that webinar email that was sent out, so you can also email me directly, and I will be happy to answer all of your questions. But I'm going to wrap it up there for the actual webinar. So I will get back to everyone as soon as I can. And if we do set up a Q&A session, I will send out information about that as well. But I hope everyone has a great rest of their week. And thank you so much for attending the webinar.